Live. And we got the red live button.
Yeah, welcome,
That-
welcome, welcome to Tea Talk.
And
We are so hyped,
yes,
people. You
welcome
are
to the
here.
show.
Absolutely. We are burning some sage. And how you doing today, Gina? Welcome to Thursday.
Oh, I'm, should I even say it? I'm feeling kind of spicy.
I love that. Yes, I'm feeling
It's
all
been an
about the red.
interesting, it's been an interesting day, but I feel good. I feel good. I feel good. I feel good. How
It's
about you,
feeling
MJ?
great. I'm feeling good. For me, it's all about the roses.
I
I've
know.
acted. We have activated our red tent sisters, activated the love. And if you don't know what the red tent is, before we even start, I'm going to take the red tent is a gathering of women loving each other no matter what. They are not holding grudges. They are not holding any bickering or bad energy. They are women coming together to empower women, to help each other, to guide them, to share the guidance with them, and then open the door so they can go out into the world and live their best life. This is what a red tent sister does is we open up our red tents to provide guidance and help each other and shelter and love. What we do not do in the red tent is go against each other and bicker with each other, or or take the gifts that a red sister has given you and then try to use them to throw it in her face and not be of a red color of help. And I want to tell you why. Because red roses and roses, I'm going to go back in time and I'm going to read this for you because this is how important this is. Mary Magdalene energy is red rose energy, and it symbolizes the return of divine feminine, the divine feminine ray. This is the energy of rising together, united. And that's why all this bickering that's going on and all this stuff that I see on the internet and people attacking each other needs to stop. You need to get a rose. You need to connect with the pure essence. Just stop and smell a rose and see how you feel after. You don't want to bicker. You don't want to fight. You won't get upset. You want to love. This is Mary Magdalene energy, guys. This is about reconnecting with yourselves and helping others find their light, not destroying each other, helping others. The red tent is about gathering others, helping them. And if, okay, whatever in this red tent is not for you, there are many other red tents. Take what you need and go on to the next tent, my sisters. That is what the red tent is. It's women empowering women to take yourselves to the next living. I've done so much. In my red tent, I've opened my red tent for sisters in the past life regressions for free to help people understand themselves. Because you know why? Because I felt people needed it. But if that person that I gave a past life is now going to come back and attack me, what did you get? What was your lesson? What did you learn from that tent that you entered? And that's what you got to think about when you do that. We need to rise above the attacking and the going. When you open a red tent, it is to go and get some wisdom and love and take yourself to the next level of understanding that this person opened up their heart and their wisdom to help you with what they had. And it may not have been completely for you, but take what resonates and leave the rest. But leave love behind because that's what the red is about, leaving love behind. Sprinkle love as you go and say, you know what? I bless her for her helpings and I'll move on to my next journey and letting go of everything else because there's too many women spreading hate and shadow and just throwing. The red tent is about spreading love. I am a red tent sister and I will spread love no matter what. And I invite you to our tent where we share teas and we share tinctures and we share how to use magic and we share the medicinal purposes of medicines together so that way you can help yourself. So that's what this red tent is here and what we offer you and the blessings that Gina and I have for you. So, welcome to our event. We're talking about roses, but I can't help to stop and bless and say blessings. Open up your red tent, my sisters. Honor your heart. Stop judging people. Stop being critical of people. Stop being in your shadow and smell the rose of love. It's time to reclaim the love in your heart and work from there. That's what I got. That's my spill for you today, Gina.
And you brought up something that I was thinking about earlier. That saying about stop and smell the roses. It doesn't say stop and smell the daffodils. It doesn't say stop and smell the poinsettia or whatever other flower that they might be. It says stop and smell the roses,
The
right? So
roses.
the reason why I decided for our focus today to be on roses is because I have so many different tea blends that I've created over time. And I was actually going through a few of them and I realized, gosh, girl, you love rose petals. And I've gotten, remember we did a heart chakra episode a few weeks back, and we did a blend that has rose petals in there. We actually did two blends, and one of them has rose petals. And the one that I'm drinking today, this is one I created. Came up with this blend, I want to say maybe 2 years ago. This one has, ready for it, cacao. So rose
Ooh.
and cacao. You want to make it even more powerful, add some cacao to your rose.
Chocolate. I love
Yeah.
chocolate.
So that's the one that I have. So this one has Damiana rose cacao, as well as a little bit of cinnamon chips, and then I have a pure vanilla bean inside that's infusing that tea blend. But today is all about how to use roses, right? Because it's this time of the year when most rose bushes are in bloom. And I wanted to talk about roses because I don't want, most of you are probably thinking, well, I have all these rose bushes. What do I do? You probably cut them and you make some arrangements and you bring them inside. But short of that, you probably have no idea what else you can do with rose petals, right? You can probably make rose water. You might have done that before, but I'm going to share with you so many different things that we can do with, that gorgeous bush that we call the rose bush, right? But before we go on, I'm going to mention just a few of the benefits. We won't talk extensively on the benefits because we've discussed them before in another video, because I want to really focus on what can we do with all of these rose petals. Once we either get them in, when we have a beautiful bouquet like what MJ has in front of her, or when we go out into our yard and we harvest the rosebuds off of our bushes, right? And I do want to clarify, if you're going to make things that you're going to eat from the rose petals, make sure that they are not treated with pesticides. So you do not want to be using, like MJ has a bouquet in front of her, which most likely comes from a nursery or something. So she doesn't want to use that for food or anything that she's going to eat or drink. So what she has can potentially be used for maybe potpourri and other things. But
Right.
I want to clarify that what I'm going to be referring to here, for the most part, are rose petals that are not treated with pesticides, organic, completely clean,
The ones
pest.
that you grow, the ones you
Yes.
grow that you go on the tree or you see everybody growing out in the garden. I do have a rose bush that when my mom passed away, and I carry it with me. It's one of my favorite plants, and it blooms very rarely. It blooms twice a year, and mom blooms twice a year. So I do have a rose bush, and I understand exactly what you mean. And this one is great. Like I said, this one is beautiful. This one is a show. Look how spectacular she is for you to smell. And oh
Hmm.
my God, I'm in love. I'm in love to give. Imagine giving somebody a rose and just saying, I love you. I just love you. And not, how about no words needed? You just hand somebody a rose. What would that feel for you?
Cheryl is here. She says, "Hello, sisters," and oh, that sounds amazing. Oh, just wait,
Hi,
just wait.
Cheryl.
All right. So, a few of the benefits, real quickly. Now, the roses have been used for centuries. Okay, centuries, for spiritual purposes as well as medicinal purposes. There are about 130 different species of roses, and thousands of what they call cultivars. So, farmers are always trying to come up with these new variations of roses, right? But here's the thing, all roses are edible. All of them are edible. So you don't have to say, well, which particular one are we supposed to be looking for? All roses are edible. No, I'm talking about rose petals today because there is that thing called rose hips, which is the fruit of the rosebud. Once you pick off the petals, and there's that what's called the rose hip underneath. That's not what we're referring to today. We're talking specifically, well, all of the recipes or blends that I'm talking about have rose petals in them. Okay,
Ah,
not these aren't the rose hips. All right, so all roses are edible. They're naturally caffeine free. Unless you add the rose petals into something that has caffeine, then of course it's not caffeine free. But rose petals on them by themselves are naturally caffeine free. Okay. They are rich in different antioxidants, which help to combat the effects of free radicals. And there's one particular antioxidant, which is called gallic acid, which has been proven through research to be anti-cancer, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and so on and so forth. Lots of different antis there. There's another one called anthocyanin, which is a color pigment, right? It's a color pigment in the rose, and those are associated with having a healthy urinary tract. So if you have issues with, that area, drinking some rose tea, which we're going to talk about, is would be really good for that. It also helps with eye health, believe it or not. So most people think, carrots, good for the eyes. So roses are really, really good for eye health as well. Also with improved memory. And here's something that I only found out maybe a couple years ago. The Chinese have been using roses or the rose petals for thousands of years to treat urinary tract infection. And they've also been using it to treat menstrual cramps. So if you're a woman and you have very painful periods, I'm going to give you the routine that traditional Chinese medicine recommends that you go through to kind of help to alleviate all of that pain. So they recommend that you drink 2 cups of rose tea a day for 12 days. And you start a week prior to when you know your cycle is going to begin. And if you've been tracking it, then whenever it's coming up. So you plan a week ahead when you know it's supposed to start, and you drink 2 cups of rose tea a day, and then of course you continue for 12 days, and you do that for 6 cycles. That is the recommended routine to help to alleviate menstrual pain according to traditional Chinese medicine. So the results should be that you have reduced pain or no pain after that, and you also end up being like uplifted because it does help with mood improvement and relieving anxiety and all of those different things. It is very relaxing. If you've never had a cup of rose tea, it's very, very relaxing. It's also a natural antidepressant. Drinking the rose petals are. Now, drinking the rose tea is very, very easy to make. So let's just talk about that for a second. All you need, and this is going to sound, like Gina, really, I mean, it's really obvious, right? You need maybe a tablespoon of the dried rose petal. If that's all you have, use about a tablespoon of dried rose petals to a cup of hot water, and let that steep for maybe 10 minutes because the dried rose petals tend to take a little bit longer to steep. Or you can use about a cup of the fresh rose petals and add that to maybe 3 cups of the hot water and let that steep for about 5 minutes. Your fresh rose petals are going to steep very quickly because they're fresh, right? So about a cup of the fresh to 3 cups of hot water, let it steep for 5 minutes, and then you can strain it, and you can take the leftover petals, and you can put them among your plants. You can eat them. It's entirely up to you, okay? Because they're the color will have faded a little bit, but you can still eat them. So it is really that simple to make a cup of rose petal tea, okay? Really, really simple. So you're getting all of these benefits simply from adding some rose petals into some hot water. So it's naturally antibacterial as well. if you have any kind of diabetic issues, and here's where the caveat comes in. If you're taking medication for diabetes, you do want to check with your doctor if you're going to add rose petal tea, because rose petal tea is a natural treatment for treating insulin resistance. Okay, so if you're diabetic, you do have to be careful how much rose petal tea that you're going to drink. It also helps with improving your heart health, unless of course you add in, things that have caffeine. Then of course that's going to cause some issues. But just plain rose petal tea is going to contribute to heart health. One of the tea blends that I actually made a few years back when I was first diagnosed with a heart condition was a blend of hawthorn berries, which is like one of the best herbs for heart health, as well as rose petals. So those two combined, and then of course I added in a little bit of cacao and a few other things that have no caffeine. So that was the tea blend that I created for me for heart health. But on its own, rose petals are very, very good, and they contribute to really good heart health as well. It is it is a potential laxative. So you do want to kind of stick to no more than 2 cups of
Little
rose
bit.
because it does have, that could potentially send you to the bathroom often if you overdo it. Although it does also contribute to improved digestion. Well, I mean, that's where the improved digestion comes in. If you don't go over 2 cups a day, right? It is very high in vitamin C. So, really good for coughs, colds, that sort of thing. And I have made a note here to myself to remind you, do not confuse this with rose hips, like I mentioned earlier, because the rose hip and the rose petal are two totally different parts of the plant. So I did mention already how to make rose petal tea. Very, very easy, very, very simple. So what I'm going to do, and MJ, this is going to be a very fluid conversation, okay? I'm going to share with you various ways that we work with the rose petals, right? In addition to just making rose petal tea, which is great on its own. But if you have an abundance of rose petals, I want to share with you different ways that you can that we can work with the rose petals. But what I want MJ to do is to kind of share with us some of the historical and magical uses, from way back in the day when, people like us would have been burnt at the stake doing things like we do. If she wants to share, you know, share some things about how the rose petals or roses were used magically back then,
Okay.
and then I'll go into some other things.
Sure, no worries. So spiritually for roses, the rose petals are amazing. It's a feminine energy, as you know. Aphrodite's energy. It's Venus. It's water, air element. Okay. It's protections. It's dreams. It's spells. You can soak the cloth in rose water and place it. Back in the day, they would soak cloths and linen in rose water, and they would put them in the temples, not only for dyeing but for the smell of the roses. Rose petals reduce stress and domestic upheaving. So before someone knew that they were coming and a very arrogant person was going to come into the house, they put some roses in. So smell some roses, guys. Calm down a little bit. Okay. So put some
Yes.
roses out, because this literally is what Gina says, smelling the roses. They would put rose scents, because when you're coming with someone that's arrogant or upset or egotistical, when they smell the scent, it calms
Mhm.
the mind and the brain and brings them down. And roses were put out there. Okay. Aphrodite's, this is Aphrodite's one of her elements. It's beauty. This helped with your clairvoyance, passion. All right. You can contact other people from other planes. All right. This is plain energy with roses. If you take a rose bath, it actually removes toxins from the body. So take some rose petals with a little bit of rose oil, put it in your bathtub, and there you go. Or burn some just the same, burn some rose incense, or I have some dry roses that we burn This is a magical rose blend, and Gina has one as well. And it's for love. It calls in love. It calls in magic. It was mainly it was used for magic to call in. Now, way back in the day when roses were first out, they were used as tendency because of their beautiful smell and because of the way that it made the elite feel. This wasn't a poor man's flower. This was a very rich man's flower. This was money back in China. Like Gina said, this was back. Okay, and then it says during the 15th century, the rose was used as a symbol for the faction fighting to control England. The white rose symbolized York, and the red symbolized Lancaster, which technically, you know, that movie War of the Roses?
Mhm.
That is what started the War of the Roses, was two people using the rose. Mary Magdalene uses the rose. It's the rose lineage. So the rose has a lot of significance throughout time, going back to Isis energy. But roses are used for love. And back in the day, and I'm talking about, we're talking Isis time, we're talking Mary Magdalene, we're even talking cowboy time. Roses were put in the water because remember, people didn't bathe like we bathe now.
Yeah.
Back then, if you bathed once a month, that was like something really special. So imagine the female women, they only bathed when it was that time of the month, ladies. Can you imagine that? They bathed in red to get the smell down because they didn't have soap like now. So when you think about it, that's all they had, and that's what they did. So roses were used in that sense for love. They were smashed up and they put on candles to attract love. Say you wanted to call in your lover, you would smash up and grind up the rose and roll it onto a candle, and you will burn the candle with the intention of calling in your lover. Now, also when you got married, you would line actually the altar space where the bride would walk down with roses. So that way, that's where it originated. The rose down the aisle was because
Mhm.
the roses were for passion and for all that amazingness in the marriage. So that's what I have for rose. And for me, the rose is rhodochrosite. It is the stone of compassion and love because even when the most upset person takes a whiff,
Mhm.
woo, it just brings it, like right now I just smell it, and it brings my level down and my stress
Yeah.
down, and it is a stress reliever. So that's what I have for this amazing, besides being all the greatness, that's what and you can do so many magical things with roses. It's used in almost all magical spells. So it's something to have. Take out the leaves, take the rose out when it's done. So what I'll do here with this bunch is when the roses are done, I will pop them out. I will let them dry in the sun. And once they're all nice and dry, I will put them in a jar. And now I have dried roses. Now, once again, remember these that Gina said are correct. The ones you get from the stores that are cut or the supermarket, you cannot eat. But if you have a garden outside, I invite you to go buy and munch out on some roses. You're gonna love it.
Yeah. Or
That's
if you're okay with the dry, just order the dried rose petals from a reputable source to make sure you're getting the organic. Now, I'm wearing rose quartz, and actually this is a combination of rose quartz and pearls. So that's my magic today.
beautiful. I love it.
I also have black pearls on because I just like the combination of, how they feel together. But the rose quartz, everybody is familiar with rose quartz as being, that love stone, but MJ mentioned rhodochrosite, which is also another stone for love and compassion. All right, so what I'm going to share with you, and MJ jump in whenever, is I'm going to share with you different ways of working with rose petals, because I didn't want today to be just about rose tea. You know, we're talking about, should I mention this word? The whole thing about Kundalini and passion. And
We're
so we're at
raising up.
red tent. So we're going to talk about different ways, and all of these can be looked at as being magical tools or spiritual tools. At least, when I create them, that's my intent in creating them, right? So we talked about rose tea, very, very simple to make. Rose petals, hot water, and if you want to add in a little bit of raw honey to that, you can. But the rose petals themselves do have a sweetness to them, so you don't really even need to add any kind of sweetener. Let me show you the one that I was drinking, and this is the one that has the cacao and Damiana with the rose petals. So it has a like a golden color, but there is a hint of pink in there from the rose petals. So you don't and I don't have any sweetener at all in there. It's just a natural sweetness from the cacao, of course, as well as from the rose petals. However, let's talk about rose syrup. And yes, I'm going to talk about sugar usage. We're going to use some sugar. I mean, it's okay. You're not going to use it every single day. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. I don't know. So we're going to make some rose syrup. So with this one, the rose syrup, you can utilize dried or fresh. Entirely up to you. If you're using the fresh rose petals, you want about 3/4 cups of water, about 3/4 cups of sugar. Now I have monk fruit sweetener here, so if you have that, you can certainly use that as a substitute for the regular sugar. You can also use I don't know if anyone has ever heard of honey powder. I love honey powder. You can find it. It come in these packets, and it looks like sugar. It looks like brown sugar, but it's called honey powder. So you can substitute honey powder in the place of the sugar, or you can also substitute monk fruit. Even stevia. The only thing I don't like about stevia is when you get stevia in the store, it's been bleached. That's how it turns white, right? So I hesitate to say stevia, but if you have that and you want to substitute the stevia, you can do that as well. So using to make rose syrup, 3/4 cups of water, 3/4 cups of sugar, or your substitute, and a 1/4 cup of dried rose petals. But you can also use the fresh. In case of the fresh, if you're using fresh, you're gonna need about at least a cup and a half of pressed rose flowers, just gently pressed to make sure that you come up with a cup to a cup and a half. Think about if a fairy were to lie on this in this cup of rose petals, right? Just that weight of that fairy is pressing down on the rose petals. That's how much you need to make this. So you're going to put all of your ingredients into a saucepan and bring it to a light simmer. You don't want the sugar to burn, so you don't want it to be too hot, right? So just bring it to a light simmer. When it starts to simmer a little bit, turn it way down. You're going to stir to make sure that the sugar is dissolving completely, right? Dissolve completely. Then you're going to take it off the heat and let it just sit there and steep on its own for about 15 minutes. Then you're going to strain away the rose petals, and you're going to pour what's left into an airtight container, and that should last for about 2 weeks in the refrigerator. That's your rose syrup. Now, what can you do with rose syrup? A lot. You can take your rose syrup and you can add it to lemonade that you might make. You can take that rose syrup and you can add to other teas that you might make. Let your imagination run wild. There's so many different ways of utilizing that rose syrup. That is just one way. Have you ever, here's another thing. You can also make lattes. Make a rose latte. You can use coconut milk, almond milk, regular milk if that's your cup of tea, and or whatever type of milk you want to use, and take some of that rose syrup, the rose petal syrup, and add to that hot milk and create your rose latte. So get creative. The idea is I'm giving you, all of these different ideas to utilize all of these roses that you have growing in your yard, or that your whatever, if you happen to buy the dried rose petals, how to utilize this in different ways and create your magical tools for the kitchen, or tools for your spiritual practice. All right, so that is rose syrup. I don't know, MJ, have you ever made rose syrup?
No, I haven't made real syrup. I'm not really a syrupy type of person, so but I can see where it would be good. I do make though rose scrubs with sugar. So that same
Yes.
concept, we take the rose scrub and we make scrubs with it. So I don't use it as to congest it because sugar. I use the sugar because it's so good for your body, and I
Yes.
rub it on, and I take the roses, and you can once again smash it up, and you can add some sugar to it, the brown sugar, and you can make a beautiful foot rub with it. It's amazing, and you can gift it. Roses are
Yes.
great, so you can gift it up in a little jar, and you can give somebody some rose, some, you can call it rose foot love or rose sugar love for you, and they can use it to wash their bodies.
Yeah. That's one of the things I'm actually going to talk about. So rose syrup, I know not everybody loves to use sugar. Some people are, off sugar. That's why I like to give different substitute different ideas that you can substitute the sugar that's in here, because I know a lot of people use different substitutes for sweeteners as well. Okay, so the next one is rose sugar. And it's not what MJ was talking about, the body scrub. This is a another kind of the dried version of the rose syrup, right? A few weeks ago I made magnolia sugar, and it's literally a gigantic southern magnolia. You rip up the petals, add it into sugar, blend it up really, really well, and then spread it out on a container to dry over about 3 days. Then you put it back into a blender, you blend it up to get that powdery consistency again, and then you put it into a jar and you use it however you would use normal sugar. That's for the magnolia. Well, to make rose petal sugar, it's the same thing, except it'll have a different color. It'll have the color of whatever rose petals you utilize, right? So you'll need about a cup of sugar or whatever sweetener. You'll need a cup of fresh petals, the fresh rose petals, and then you're going to blend those really well together in a blender. Spread it onto a cookie sheet, because what happens is the rose petals have that oil, the essential oil is in the rose petals, so it's going to get the sugar wet. So that's why after you blended them together, you spread it out onto a cookie sheet. And what I do is I put it into the oven, not with the heat on, just put it into the oven to get away from anything flying around or ants, that sort of thing. And then usually takes about 2 to 3 days to dry out completely. And what I like to do is every day or so I will check, and I will just kind of turn it using either a spatula or a spoon to get that mixture going. And then after about 3 days, the sugar should be completely dry. There shouldn't be any moisture left in there. However, it'll be kind of hard. So you want to take the sugar and put it back into a dry blender, blend it up again to get that powder, and then store it. And you can use that however you'd use regular sugar. You can also sprinkle it onto desserts. You can use it in different recipes that you might be making that would call for sugar, and you kind of want to add a different flair to it. Lots of different ways that you can work with the rose sugar. You can also take the rose sugar, like MJ was suggesting, you can take that rose sugar and you can also add in maybe some coconut oil or olive oil, and then you have a sugar scrub for your body. So there are many different ways that you can utilize this. I personally like to use brown sugar when I'm doing my body scrubs, not the white sugar, but it's entirely up to you what kind of sugar you prefer.
Right. I use brown sugar too. I think
Yeah,
it's just a better scrub on it.
yeah. So that is rose sugar. Now everybody's probably heard of. Let me just check the comments real quick. Um, Cheryl says, not sugar. I bet that syrup is divine. It is. That's why I say, if you have it, you probably won't use it all the time. But if you make drinks, and I'm talking the adult drinks, you can also add a little bit of that to different drinks that you make. You can also add it to if work with it during a cacao ceremony. There's so many different ways that you can utilize it. I'm sure that you guys can come up with lots of ideas. Cheryl says I make rose sugar and is that salt? Yes, and salt scrubs as well. Okay.
See, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
Cheryl makes scrubs like that. So yeah,
Mhm.
definitely can use rose. You know, it can be used into anything. Rose can be put, I mean, she's giving you great recipes, but roses can be basically used in everything
So many
that
different.
you would want to. Yeah, so many different things to I would actually start Googling and looking roses and all the benefits that it that you can utilize it for, because it's just not one thing. It's so many things. So many.
So many. Yeah. So the next one is rose water, and most people have I've probably heard about rose water. Um, Very easy to make. Again, two ways of making rose water. One, you can just take the rose petals, put it into a pot with hot water, and let it simmer down, and you have your basic rose petal water that way. It's going to have color. The second way of making rose water is kind of a distilled method where you put the rose petals into the hot water. You have another little container that where you're going to put a bowl. So that bowl is going to sit on something that elevates it up from the water itself. And you're going to take the cover of your pot and flip it upside down. Here's what happens. As the water, the steam comes up, as it rises, the essential oils from the roses piggyback onto the steam, go up and hit the inverted pot cover, and then it drips down into the little bowl that you have sitting in there. It takes a lot longer to do, and this is more of a hydrosol. It takes a lot longer to collect a usable amount. So most people I know tend to do it just the easy way and get the colored rose water. It's entirely up to you, right? Entirely up to you. But that's two different ways of creating rose water. It's the hydrosol method or the distill method, and just directly onto the stove top, um, where you have just the rose petals inside of the hot water and getting the color that way. Very, very easy to make. So different ways you can work with rose water. You can certainly put it into your bathtub. You can cook with it. You can bake with it. If you're making desserts and you want to give a different flair, add it to your desserts. You can add it to drinks, cocktails. You can, and MJ mentioned this earlier, spraying it on linens. So you can just put it into a spray bottle. What I like to do is add it into the spray bottle, and then I add a few drops of the rose essential oil into it, shake that up really well, and I spray that on all my linen. So you get just the rose water as well as the more concentrated essential oil in there as well. And then
In
of
your
course,
car, in your car, in your bag, you take it when you have to go to the
yes,
bathroom and you want to spray bathrooms. Or magically, I'm just going to stop her. Magically, if you
mhm,
just want to call in love, if you make some rose water and you want to spray it and you want to call in a lover, remember rose water, you're calling it in, but doing it in a waxing moon. And the best time to call in a lover is Friday. So Friday is associated with the planet Venus, Aphrodite, and love. So make your rose water on that day, and you want to call in love on that day. That's when you call in love. So that's what you use rose water for, is for love and magic and spells on a Friday. You can do magic every day of the week. That's not what I'm saying. But to amplify the magic, do it on the specific day it's meant for. And there you go.
absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, today was not going to be your typical tea talk. All right, so mention bath water, bath salts. Yes, you did mention bath salts, and I do have one here that I made, and it does have lots of rose petals inside. So
Yeah.
I love putting rose petals in mine. This also has a few other things in it, but rose petals,
So
love, love.
save your rose petals. You see, if you save your rose after they're done, don't throw them away. Dry them. Make it. This is going back to basic, guys. Just like using teas, this is going back to basic. That these beautiful flowers can be taken apart and used for different things that you're
Mhm,
gonna love. You're gonna be like, oh my god, why didn't I think of this before?
mhm. One of the things I did want to mention, we do have that rose incense. This
Oh
is
yeah,
mixed. This is blended with sage and I think one
it
other
is
thing.
rose. It is rose, white sage, and myrrh. It is rose, white sage, and myrrh. That
Okay,
is what
so
is in this plant. Okay,
so
right
what
here.
you don't you do not want to use this for food. So it's very easy to
No.
actually make your own um, powdered roses. You need, and I keep turning around because I have lots of tools behind me to share. Every kitchen should have one of these. Every magical kitchen, people like us should have one of these. It's just a coffee grinder, but I don't use it to grind coffee because. So you grab yourself, if you have dried roses, dried rose petals, you put it inside of, put the petals into the coffee grinder. Or, I mean, you can use the bigger blender. I just find that the coffee grinder really gets it powdery, right? So you powder
And
up.
I'm old school. I'm old school. I'm with the mortar and I'm a mortar and pestle girl. I'm a crone. I go to old school
Yeah,
and I'll stay there because that's what they do in old school. They mortar and pestle it until it becomes dust. It takes longer than the faster, but if you have no special tools, go old school.
yeah. That's one of the other option I was going to talk about. So if you have the coffee grinder, I would utilize the coffee grinder and then um, get strainer. That's the word I'm looking for, right? Strainer, and uh, pour it through the strainer to get rid of all of the little pieces that might, whatever doesn't fit through the strainer. You can put it back into the coffee grinder and go again to get it as fine of a powder as you can. Now, MJ did mention the mortar and pestle, and that is one tool that people like us should have in your kitchen. This happens to be a peach jade. What'd you say, MJ?
I have three. I have three of
Three?
them.
I think you have three. I have this. This is peach jade, and then I have this other wooden one that I showed earlier. But I have another wooden one that is very intricate. It's literally like different blocks of wood that have been almost like a puzzle that have been put together, and it's real. I have that one put away, but it's so pretty. So I have three of them as well. And that again, it's old school. So you're going to be putting a lot of elbow grease into it, but you're also putting your
Excuse me.
energy, right? When you're
Excuse me.
bless
Oh,
you.
sorry. Mm.
So when you're grinding, you're also infusing your energy into it as well. Just know this does take a little bit longer, but it is, yeah, this
It's
is a
okay.
great method.
And I want to see my mortar and person. One of it is made from an olive tree, so it's made and it actually smells like olive oil. So my mortar and another one's made from a bamboo tree, so it's really you can tell that, and they're different. Different grains will
Mhm.
help, and I want you to know that when you're grinding stuff in these different grains, you get a different reaction. And the one that she has that's crystal gives another gradient as well. So as you're mixing, know this in the back of your head too. I mean, it's old
Yep.
school, but each one is going to give you a different grain, but still
Mhm.
amazing.
Yes, and you might want to just look up the the energetics behind all of these different trees. When people look outside, they see trees, right? But every tree has different meanings behind it. So look up the meaning of the oak tree, the meaning of the pine tree, the meaning of bamboo, all of this, and that will kind of give you an idea of the energies. If you happen to have a mortar and pestle that's made from these particular woods, what the energy is that's being infused into your magical products. Okay, so that's rose mentioned rose water. Okay, so the next one is really easy, potpourri. We talked about this a little bit. So what MJ is going to do when these are, or she doesn't have to make potpourri. She can take a couple of them, she can hang them upside down and have them completely dry like that and preserved, right? Or she can take them apart and she can add them to other dried flowers and make some potpourri. And what do you think some other flowers would be to make potpourri with? Ideas,
Oh,
MJ?
there's so many flowers out there that there's anything in your garden because everything is growing now. There is not one flower out there that you should not be utilizing to make a beautiful potpourri plant, or
Yeah.
even a sage. A sage, make sage with it. You don't have sage, doesn't have to be white sage. You can actually add roses and everything that is blooming, lavender, and combine them together, and it can be a sweet fragrance that comes in. Because right now, I mean, I couldn't pick up, there's so many flowers in bloom right now. I couldn't decide which one. But if
Yeah.
you have a beautiful garden, you can
Mhm.
pick them all and put them together, and you would have the most amazing.
Yeah.
It'll be a floral, like a floral satchel that you burned, and it's real. It's
Mhm.
sweet energy. Remember, sage, white sage, clears out negativity, but the floral brings in luck and
Yes.
good blessings. So you always want to have a floral one to bring in the blessings. So how nice is that? Or if not, when it dries up, you can burn it on a charcoal disc, and it does the same thing. It adds
Mhm.
the air to the fragrance to the air.
Yeah. So let me give you a quick tip on how to dry. If you're collecting flowers from your garden to dry them, I do a method that I seen my grandmother use and it works. So I've been doing this for years, right? I take a paper bag and I do the same thing with fruits that are not quite ripe that I might buy from the store, but they're not quite ripe. Avocados, especially, get a paper bag, put the dried petals or the put your rose petals into that bag, right? And whatever other flowers that you're drying, drop them into the bag, close the top. I like to staple the top just to keep it sealed, and then put it into a sunny location, like in the morning where it's going to get that first morning of sun. And I usually do it maybe every 6 or 8 hours, but at least once a day, pick up that bag and just shake it up just to get the air circulating. It takes about 5 to 7 days, but they'll all dry. And when you open that bag, the aroma that comes out of there is intoxicating. So then you take your potpourri and put it into a container and just display in your home. You can also add some essential oils into the flowers before you seal the bag. Just if you have rose essential oil or other essential oils that you want to add in, lavender maybe, put a few drops in, seal the bag, and then shake it up. And then every day for at least once a day, you shake up that bag really well until it's completely dry. Right, and that's an easy way to dry petals or flower petals. Very easy. I know people that hang, they make bundles and they have them hanging, and it's really pretty that way. That's another method. I just put them into a paper bag because I that's the method that I learned and that I like to do.
See,
So I
and
don't,
I dry them out and I lay them out on paper, on the
yes.
paper bag. I lay them out on the paper bag in the sun, and I let them dry on the sun. And then once they get their suntan with the sun, and I
Mhm.
bring them up, I let them cool down, and then I go in my little mortar and pestle and I crush them up because they're going to be I use them for magic. So they love magic and candle magic and decorating candle. And let me tell you, when you decorate a candle, say you want to give something someone special, how about candle? I say candle magic, and you're like, oh, but how about you create a rose and you mash it up yourself with your own hands and you make glitter and you put beautiful glitter, and then you take that rose with some essential oils and you put it on a beautiful candle and you put a little bow on it and you present it to somebody. Do you know how magical that is and how they would love that? And it's all about love. So think outside the box and back to basics because you're creating with your hands and it costs
Exactly.
nothing.
Yeah. And the thing is, everybody at some point in their life has done candle magic. If you've had a birthday and you had a birthday cake with candles on it and you blow it out, you made a wish and you blow it out, it's candle magic. We've been doing that,
Magic.
you know. Yes. So when we say things like this, candle magic, don't go woo, because chances are you've done it. At some point in your life, you made a wish and blew out a candle on a birthday cake. That's
So how
candle magic.
awesome to upgrade that candle and use it and take
Yes.
these candles and add little pretty things to
Mhm.
them and decorate them, and create. You have beautiful flowers outside that you can grind up, or some
Yes.
rosemary, lavender, whatever you have, you can utilize it. But today it's this beautiful baby right here, the rose, and she is
She's the
majestic in
star.
every sense of the word. Yeah, she is the star
Cheryl,
here.
Cheryl says she loves rose water. It's so refreshing. And she also said gardenias, daisies, pretty much, yes, pretty much anything. Whatever flowers you have
Everything.
growing in your yard, you can add
Everything is
to them.
growing now.
Yes.
Everything is, see, here in Puerto Rico, the flamboyant tree, which you call the Prince Royal over there in Florida, is
Hmm.
at its bloom season. So when it's bloom, when I tell you it's got red buds, just like roses that bloom out of it, it is the most regal, amazing. And I take pictures all over. You'll see me posting all the time because it's the specialness of that flower. This is the
Yeah.
same thing. The rose is in full bloom now. Take advantage of it, guys. Look into your garden. These flowers are not, they're just not meant to look pretty. They utilize them, they're magic. And we got to go back to the magic. So I
Yes.
love that you said that, Gina, and you made the rose the tea of the day because it's not only the tea, it is just the flower, the essence. And she
Right.
started with Kundalini. And I want to say, and I want to, oh no, Kundalini, no. Yes. Where have you lost your passion? Kundalini is about raising the passion in you. Where do you add a little red lipstick? Where do you add a little to your life? A little zest to you. You don't need a partner. You don't need anybody. You need yourself. What are you passionate about? Whether it's a piece of cocoa or chocolate with some tea, some
Hmm.
flowers, some sugar, that beautiful rose sugar that Gina talked about. What are you passionate about? That's what the Kundalini energy is. It's rising in your passion and sparking the fire within you. So let's do that with this amazing flower this month and let us know how you're going to use it.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So a couple more examples of how you can utilize the rose petals. You can make a rose wreath. So if let's say MJ has like a dozen roses in front of her and she wanted to dry them all, she could actually create a wreath using the dried flower heads. Really, really pretty, pretty. And if they were white, you could use them for a wedding. So there's so many, and remember, roses come in so many different colors, so many different colors, and each color kind of means something else, but they can all be utilized for tea and other magical things. You can also use because they're edible, you can use the petals for garnish. um if you make charcuterie boards, you can use the petals to dress up your charcuterie boards. You can also sprinkle them on your dining room table, to kind of give your dining room table a little bit of an oomph. You know what I mean. Sprinkle them in your tub. Get a nice big cup, and before you step in, just fill the top of your the water, the tub in your the water in your tub with rose petals. Can you imagine how decadent that feels stepping into that tub? It just elevates your bath to a whole other level rather than just stepping into a tub with just the water and maybe a little few bubbles and that sort of thing. We talked about making the sugar scrub using the rose petals, and think of different ways that you can utilize your rose water and the rose sugar, all of those, many different ways that you can utilize them. Let me see what else I had here. um
I think we gave
yeah,
them 52 minutes of it. I think that's pretty much a
no,
little, I
but
don't want to
here's one.
overwhelm them.
um I'm going to give you a couple more because when I after I wrote on all my notes, I came up with two more ideas. But here's one: rose petal jam or jelly. I don't know if anybody's ever made jelly. There's lots of recipes online. Very, very easy. If you've made jellies before, jams, just think about, rose petals being your main ingredient for that one. But there's lots of recipes out there for that. And there's another one I wanted to share because it popped into my head. Rose petal honey, really easy. Fill up a mason jar with rose petals, the fresh rose petals. Dried can work as well, but fresh is preferred. So fill up your mason jar with the fresh rose petals. Pour the honey in to where it's covering up the rose petals. Make sure you use maybe a bamboo skewer. Nothing metallic goes into honey. So use a bamboo skewer or something that's non-metallic to make sure you get all of the air bubbles out. So you stir it up really well, get all of the air bubbles out. Make sure the rose petals are covered. Seal that. Put it into a cabinet for about 6 weeks, and then you can utilize your rose petal honey for whatever uses you want. But the one that I was thinking of, and it came it came to mind It literally popped into my head when I picked up my jar of chia seeds. So I'm going to make chia rose petal pudding using chia seeds. I wrote it down. Chia seeds, oatmeal, fresh rose petals, some cut up strawberries, and then rose petal honey and coconut milk, or maybe almond milk, depending on which one. I might try both of them to see which flavor I prefer. But that's the other thing. Once you start to experiment, your mind is just gonna go wild.
Yeah, she went crazy. She went all over the place. This has started out as a tea, and now look, we look at
Yeah,
all the ideas that she gave her, and now do your research when you do it, and remember what she's talking about is the ones that you grow on that you're growing. If you're not growing them, you cannot take the flowers that I have here and utilize the same thing. That's not what they're for. These are only for this. You can use to dry, potpourri, take a bath with, all of that. Anything else with the recipes, you want to make sure that it is fresh flowers that you're growing in your garden that you actually can pick out if you want to do that.
yeah.
But
And
yeah,
sorry, make sure that you are not spraying pesticides on your roses. So when I say, the roses that you grow, it's untreated with you don't want to be spraying chemicals on your roses and then using, because then again it's chemically treated. So you want to make sure they're organic roses that you're utilizing for your
right.
food and that sort of thing. Yeah.
There you go.
So I did say that today was going to be kind of different because I didn't want it. I wanted it to be about roses, but not just about the rose tea, right? So give you
She
a
gave
lot
you
of
a lot.
that you
Okay, you
can work.
have a lot. I want to see what you guys invent with what everything, because now you have a lot. Now you know that roses are not there to cook with, there to stir with, there to mix with, there to make sure. I mean, I would really love the honey with roses. Hello, seriously, these
Mhm.
things are amazing, and these are things that you should try. But remember, please be safe. Please do your homework. Please make sure that before you go and run into your garden, you check out that it's no pesticides were used on those flowers, because then they're just like this and you don't want to
Right.
eat them. Okay, so please be very wary of that. If not, you can do a lot of wonderful things with that. You can also buy rose teas and know that they're good and they're organic, and do the same thing with the rose tea herb that Gina's telling you about, then you would, okay, with the ones in your garden. If you're not sure, if you're unsure, we're just giving you the unsure, okay.
Absolutely. And on that note,
Yes, enjoy all the roses
yes.
that we gave for you tonight. This was amazing. Now you know how that. I mean, I'm a little salivating because I'm a sugary. I love sweetness. So can you
Mhm.
imagine all the sweetness that we with that honey is? So get yourself some roses, guys. Light yourself from right candles. Remember to bring in the red in your life. Remember to be a red tent sister. Help another sister out, because that's what this is about. It's not about ripping each other down. That's not the vibe. It's about learning, taking to the next level. And like I said, you came into our red tent today to learn about the rose and everything. And Gina was amazing with all the stuff that she put together for you guys. So let's keep going, keep learning, and keep being amazing, because there's magic in every cup. Thank you, Gina, for amazing rose session. I truly loved it.
Thank you, MJ, for being the amazing co-host as usual. And Cheryl and anyone else who will be watching the replay, thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye bye.